I'm the Oppenheimer Ranch would say. Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Building a sustainable farm community, theoretically, in an unsustainable area. Pray for the boy. Alright. I guess he's older than me, but you know what I'm saying. Give him some thought. After discussing what Jim's team would do for the next 2 days, Mark made his way home, ate some dinner, and headed to bed. His body was so tired that he felt like he could sleep for a week, but his mind kept racing from thought to thought, and it wouldn't stop. Besides thinking about where his family might be, he wondered what FEMA would say when they talked to Kurt. He wondered about all of the training they still needed to do for the county militia. How was George doing? He hadn't really had a chance to talk to him in over a week. And what about Susan? She started off as a real asset, but now she was turning into a royal pain in the butt. Maybe Jess and Olga would straighten her out. He still needed to go see the Watson brothers about the rifle night sights too, but that was across the county line. What if he got caught crossing it? Mark desperately wanted to get off this mental carousel that refused to let him go to sleep. It seemed as if it was controlled by some Machiavellian operator who rebuffed every request to let him off. Mark forced himself to think of all the good things they had going. The gardens were coming along nicely. Their security team was shaping up well. The windmill was a godsend. Things were going fairly well, he thought. Maybe too well. They hadn't had a major setback. In fact, they were probably overdue for one. How would everyone react if the windmill broke? What if something happened to the gardens? They wouldn't have enough food without them. What if they got attacked and several of them died? Most of the people living here still hadn't come to grips with the total reality of just how bad the situation really was and how much worse it could get. Mark's fears and worries continued to spin in his brain, and they became more far-fetched and unreasonable as they exhausted his mind, matching his weary body. Finally, sleep overtook him. It gave him little peace, though. His subconscious, now unfettered by his conscious mind, ran amok through his dreams. First, he dreamed he was on a big hill overlooking Silver Hills. It was like looking down on a colony of ants performing their duties. Each person in the neighborhood did his or her job to near perfection. It was as if he was watching a perfectly choreographed ballet of efficiency. He felt pride at what they'd worked so hard to accomplish. He heard something behind him and turned to see a boulder rolling down the hill toward the workers. He stopped it before it could disrupt the harmony below, but then another boulder came rolling down. He forced himself to stop that one as well. Another came, and another. Now it was all he could do to stop the new boulders and hang on to the ones he'd already stopped. A feeling of dread spread throughout his being as he realized he couldn't stop them all. It was only a matter of time before one escaped his best efforts. Finally, a big one avoided his grasp. He watched as it rolled through the subdivision, leaving destruction and chaos in its wake. Suddenly, he found himself looking down the pipeline his team had reconnoitered. He could see Mike and the rest of this family coming toward him. He felt joy at seeing them. Then he saw a bunch of men in some kind of uniform coming up behind them. The men were dressed in white shirts with black trousers and blood-red ties. Each had on a hard hat with some kind of official-looking red diamond-shaped emblem on it. If Mark hadn't known better, he would have guessed they were Orcan exterminators. As they closed in on his family, who were unaware of their presence, they stretched out a net to snare his kin. He tried to yell at his family to warn them, but no sound would come out of his mouth. He woke up in a cold sweat, with his heart trying to pound its way out of his chest. After realizing it was only a dream and getting a drink of water to calm himself down, he went back to sleep, only to find himself looking down the same pipeline. However, this time it was the virus chasing his loved ones down. At least this time, they were aware of its presence and were running to him as fast as they could. It was a big, pink blob rolling up on them like a tidal wave. Mark watched, powerless to help, as his feet weighed so much that he was unable to move them more than an inch or two at a time. He felt horror as the virus engulfed them and then looked for its next victims. It saw and zeroed in on him with a menacing look that he wasn't sure a faceless blob could have. The terror again jolted him from his sleep, like it had the first time. He wiped the sweat from his brow and lay down again. Sleep didn't come as quickly as it had last time, but when it did, he was again on the pipeline easement. The evil this time was the band of MZBs who'd kidnapped Ronnie in Waco. Only now, they really were zombies. Mike, Jeff, Becky, Monica, and Jonathan shot at the MZBs while Gina ran with Mark's mom and dad, all three carrying the babies and running as fast as they could. The AR-15 had little to no effect on the undead marauders. It was like shooting a charging elephant with a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. Mark knew his FAL could stop the MZBs, and he took careful aim on the lead monster. Mark recognized him as the biker who'd held the knife to Ronnie's throat. Half of his head was still missing from where Ed had so skillfully used his weapon to end the man's natural life. Mark wished Ed was with him now. He squeezed the trigger and felt the hammer fall when the sights were perfectly aligned with the center of his target. Mark's pleasure at making a perfect shot was quickly shattered when he saw his bullet exit the barrel of his rifle at a snail's pace. The normally deadly projectile went about 10 feet and then fell to the ground with the force of a spitwad. Mark pulled the trigger again with the same results. He quickly emptied the entire 20-round magazine to find a nice, neat pile of bullets stacked up on the ground in front of him. He tried to change magazines but found that the mag release lever wasn't where it was supposed to be. He dropped the $1,200 club and reached for his Colt. It wasn't there. Mark thankfully awoke again. There was the faintest hint of gray coming through the window, so he got out of bed. He pulled on his clothes and boots, then strapped his .45 on his hip and patted it twice to make sure it was where it belonged. He picked his watch up off of the dresser, and the luminous hand said it was 7:03. Mark thought it should be much lighter by this time, and he looked out the window to see it was drizzling. Since the burst, there had been no real weather forecast. Not that it really mattered. Before the lights went out, weathermen usually only batted about 50 or 500 anyway, but now it was a crapshoot at best. Mark walked quietly to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast. A few minutes later, Jess walked in and kissed him good morning. "You tossed and turned all night," she said quietly. "I've got a lot on my mind." "You want to talk about it?" "Maybe later," he replied, putting on his best smile. He knew it didn't fool her. "I'm here when you're ready."